Okay. All right. Yeah, it's been a while. Thank you everyone for coming. Just for those of you who don't know me, I'm Rosie Finn. I'm an astrologer. I've been in Olympia for 30 years almost now, doing astrology, and most of you have been coming to my talks for years and years. So, yeah, let's just take a couple of deep breaths together. What we need to do to adjust to get into the zone. Keep this all together. So hands, turn off our phones. Down. All the technology up here is just tune in and kind of like vibrational and make a line with it all. And then inviting everyone in the room in, be together. Just feel a sense of togetherness to whatever extent you want that. And then I'll be on Zoom, bringing you into our room. And in whatever way we're aligned right now, tuning into our own selves, our bodies, our needs, and then just a little bit outside of ourselves, to whatever extent we feel comfortable, noticing that we're in a room with people in the field. Okay, and we're ready to bring yourself down. And yeah, we're ready to talk about this. Okay, when you're ready. Okay, for the last several months, 4 or 5 months, 6 months. Okay, thank you. I've been noticing in my sessions that I keep repeating myself, and I just thought I'll share with everyone what I'm repeating over and over again. And I've been tuning into a particular portal. Now everything's a portal, and there's all kinds of portals, and every planet's creating a portal. But there's a particular synchronicity that's happening, and when I tune into the synchronicities, into the play of the planets with stars, and I start seeing patterns, and if there's a pattern that repeats over and over and over again, that just feels like a deeper and deeper portal, and we've got a big one. And it starts in September, and it goes till about the middle of April. And there's a repeating theme that happens in this time period. And I have this sense that we're being given a time when we can adjust to new energies, new alignments that are happening for us. And we're being given a window of time to spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically adjust to moving into a new era that really starts next year. Although I think most people will feel it beginning in 2026. So we're all going to feel it next year. It's like we've all been thinking about it for a really long time. Especially those of you who've been coming for a long time. I've been talking about this flew out of bounds thing for at least a decade. No, actually 2 decades. So it's coming, it's here, it's right here. You know, it's next year. We start feeling it next summer, fall of 2025. And Pluto out of bounds is something that happens every 100 years or so. The last time it happened was the 1940s. But when it happened in the 1940s, It was out of bounds to the north of the ecliptic, and now it's going to be out of bounds to the south. And there's a very different energy between north and south. So north out of bounds Pluto is expansion, explosion, takeovers. People want to expand their empires. And when it's south, it's implosion, it's infrastructure collapse, it's revolution, it's change from within. And the more aligned we are with change from within, the easier this time period will be coming up. So the more healing work we've done around our trauma, the more we've adjusted to the energies as they've happened over the past, the easier this time period will be. And I know a lot of you may be really struggling right now because your body is working, or your bank accounts or your emotional life or whatever it is that's hitting you right now is working with this alignment. And it's not fully here yet, so I think a lot of people are doing this work ahead of time. But it will be really shortly. And I think there's kind of a magic to September to April that really, like, the planets are really giving us a beneficial way to work through it. It's like we're being given the right tonic, the right medicine, and we can work with this, or we could get caught up in a lot of drama, and that could be fun and enjoy. I don't know what I'll be doing, but hopefully I'll be doing what I'm going to suggest to you. But so right now Mercury's retrograde, and we're in kind of a time period where things are pretty grounded as far as transit alignments go. I know there's a lot of change happening in the world, but I think we're moving into a much more unstable time. So let's see what my next slide says. Okay, so I'm going to skip over that and come back if I need to. This cycle, the Pluto cycles that I've been tracking, they're 250-year cycles. The one that we're in begins with the vision time in the 1860s. So anything that was starting in the 1860s was a vision that is unfolding over the next decade. So that includes medicine, all kinds of innovations. It includes all technology, which began with Maxwell's equations in the mid-1860s, without which we would have no technology. It's Darwin, it's the Civil War, it's all kinds of things began. If you start looking, you will see 1863 began everything. The power time is Pluto out of bounds to the north. The peak was 1945, 1944. The justice time is a rectification time, a time when we're calling out for justice, we're crying for justice. There's things that are happening underneath. It's like there's a transition that happens in the 1980s, or that happened. And then what we're moving into, I said 2028 to 2029, that's the peak of this reform time that's coming up, which starts next year. So I like to start with this sine wave because this only has to do with Pluto, and it only has to do with Pluto and declination. So it's a very specific one cycle. We're going to add in a bunch more. And just so you know, one of the reasons why I've been so tuned into that cycle is because Pluto doesn't go out of bounds in its next cycle. So this is the last time Pluto goes out of bounds. So if you think of the destruction of World War II, and we're looking at a revolution that rectifies that imbalance, then after that, Pluto doesn't go out of bounds anymore, at least not for another several thousand years. So ultimately, this is a whole 26,000-year cycle that connects to the age of Aquarius. It's all one. But so let's go. These are years, and the negative means BC. And so you can see that the time out of bounds, which is above the red line or below the red line, is decreasing, decreasing, decreasing. You know, back here is the Roman Empire, Middle Ages. Yeah, usually you get dates 200, And here we go, not happening next time. So this is us right now. Okay. Now, this is a chart of this moment. So synchronistically, as we go through Pluto, Pluto starts going out of bounds, it's joined by several other transits. So when we look at this chart right now, and maybe you're familiar with these, Pluto has just moved into Aquarius. It's going to move back into Capricorn in September, and then it'll move into Aquarius for its final time in November of this year. And you will hear lots of astrologers talking about Pluto in Aquarius because it's Aquarius, which was astrology and the new age and vibration and technology and all kinds of cool things. And astrologers are fascinated with Pluto, including me right now. So it's going to move into Aquarius and it will be there for 20 years. So we have this stretch of Pluto that is going to be helping us transform our technology, our world, our worldview. Aquarius rules our ability to communicate and connect with each other, to work together, to collaborate. So Pluto has been in Capricorn since 2008. So if you think back to 2008, that's going to jog some of your memories. Not like an easy year. Remember, we all were like, the housing crisis, stock market crash, the deep economic shifts. It's like you can almost like sense that something big was happening. So Capricorn is a sign of structures. It's a sign that connects to the order of things. So Pluto has been messing with the order of things since 2008. And it's been gutting things. You know, even we think about the pandemic as a Pluto and Capricorn thing. When the pandemic started in 2020, there was an eclipse in January 2020, and Pluto and Saturn were connected. So it was like a triggering event right there at the beginning of the pandemic, and it was particularly triggering Pluto in Capricorn. So we've had moments where it's felt like our infrastructure has been falling apart. It's felt like our systems are falling apart. Pluto moving into Aquarius is not going to be so focused on money. It's not going to be so focused on government, these kind of pieces. It's going to be really focused on technology. So when we're concerned about like cyber things, it's more like things falling apart. So we'll see lots of adjustments we're making. The good news is that some things that have been very vibrational of nature will also be very activated, like homeopathy or energy medicine. These things will be able to be more effective as Pluto moves into Aquarius. It will also bring about Capricorn is hierarchy, patriarchy. It's the rule of order and law. Aquarius is like, yeah, we can do this together. And so a lot of the revolutions that have started during Pluto and Capricorn have not been successful because Pluto's been like, yeah, it's still got to be top down. So even if you take over, we're going to put another military dictatorship in its place because that's the deeper energy that's happening. So when Pluto moves into Aquarius, we have like this opportunity for this much bigger shift. And even like science and technologies that we can't imagine right now, Pluto could really bring in and change. It can bring in this element of change. You add to it, it's out of bounds, and we have wildness happening. And I think there's a real potential for awakening, the kind of awakening we've been talking about for centuries. If we go back to the 1860s, they started talking about awakening. This time that we're in right now, that we're about to move into, where some people are very frustrated. It didn't happen in the 60s, it didn't happen in the 70s, you know, but it's about to happen. Like these transits that are coming about have a very real possibility of being such a game changer that we can't even like imagine what's possible coming in. So I've only gotten to Pluto so far. We can see down here, here's Neptune, 29 degrees Pisces. If you know the zodiac, Pisces is the last sign. 29 degrees is the last degree. So Neptune is hanging out at the final degree of Pisces. And this is an important point for Neptune. So each planet, as it moves through a sign, it's changing our perception of that sign. So as Neptune has been moving through Pisces since I think 2010, 2011, maybe it's 2012. Sorry, it's in the slides. We'll get to it. But Neptune has been in Pisces, and Neptune loves Pisces. It's its favorite sign. It rules that sign. So it's been helping us re-script our reality, because Pisces has to do with how we're connected. It has to do with unity consciousness. It has to do with compassion. It has to do with how we relate to each other more psychically, empathically. And Neptune's finishing its major journey. It's 160-year cycle. So in our lives, this is the only time Neptune will be in Pisces. And it's at its final place. And just as Pluto's going out of bound, Neptune's getting into Aries, which will begin a whole nother cycle as Aries begins a cycle. And there's something about 0 degrees Aries or 29 degrees Pisces. It's called something very specific in astrology. It's called the Aries point. And it's our connection with the world. It brings us into the world. So as Neptune is at this Aries point, it's giving us access to have an impact. This is one of the reasons why Biden could step out and we could have this major shift in the election. It's why other kind of things could happen that break through the veil. And this Neptune will go back and forth all through into Aries, Pisces, all the way into 2026. So it's not kind of, it's like in its finishing journey for another year and a half. You can see Saturn, this is Saturn's down here, it's about to join Neptune. So Saturn is going to hit that Aries point and move into Aries at the exact same time, within a month. This is one of those weird synchronicities that just happens. You think about Saturn is a 29.5-year cycle, Pluto's got a 160-year cycle. That's not a harmonic, you know. They don't like regularly, you know, have this like magical way that they align. I mean, they do, but in terms of this sign, for them to be shifting signs at the same time it's like something else out there is saying, yeah, it's about to change in a big way. And this is the beginning of something significant. So you can see right now, we're like, things are cool. Things can be normal. I mean, if you're not like really tuned in, you can think, well, it's all right. It's a beautiful day. We're all okay. But there's a little bit of a frog in the boiling water kind of sensation, like something needs to kind of give. Saturn being in Pisces here, 17 degrees, it's not really close to Neptune yet. So we'll see that when we get to April and May, that's what's happening. Neptune's getting into Aries, and so is Saturn. So we've got this, it's part of the portal right now to help us get ready for that, because Pluto going out of balance, Saturn getting into Aries, Neptune getting into Aries, all at the same time, says that's a lot of air fire energy. That's a lot of instantaneous change. Aries is a sign where you can change in a second. You know, Pisces is like, you gotta feel it out. You gotta kind of swim around in it for a little while. You gotta kind of, but Aries energy is like instantaneous, spontaneous, fast. So those are those. Then the other planet in between Saturn and Neptune is Uranus. So this is Uranus, and we can see Uranus is also at the end of a sign. So this is 27 degrees Taurus. If you're not familiar with these charts and want to understand this. This is the planet, this is the degrees, this is the sign that it's in, and this is the number of minutes that breaks it down. And this looks like a mess because of my settings. So it's really like how the planets relate to each other, and just pay no attention to this right now. So Uranus is at 27 degrees Taurus right now. It's going to move into Gemini. At the same time, the other planets are moving into Aries. At the same time, Pluto's getting into Aquarius. So this Gemini is an air sign. So we're like water, earth right now. We're going to move into air, fire. So all of the outer planets, Pluto, Uranus, Neptune, Saturn, not in order, I know. But they're all moving into air, fire. So the elemental shift, and this is tropical zodiac, that's happening is going to allow things to happen very quickly once all of that air, fire energy happens. And I think for a lot of us, it's felt slow. It's felt like everything's on kind of a delay, and for the last several years. And that is about to change. Mars, this is Mars and Jupiter over here in Gemini. They're conjunct today. This is why people are really nervous right now. If you've been like feeling this for the last 2 weeks, it's kind of like, ooh. This is hitting the Cascadia region subduction zone, so it's like a little more impactful here. Because there aren't any other really kind of gnarly aspects happening, I'm not too worried about it, but I think we are feeling a little bit of a quakey energy here. Well, the signature for so all the fault lines and subduction zones, they all have their own signature. So it's like looking at a chart, and the subduction zone for this area, the fault lines in this area are, any kind of quaking happens when Mars and Jupiter are in a hard aspect, conjunction, square, opposition, in the mutable signs, particularly early degrees of the mutable signs. So this is 16 degrees right at the middle. So just like, I've been like, just move the stuff to the back of the shelf another week. And it does tend to happen right after the conjunction, which is, the next week. And then it'll be moving on. But again, we're not looking at any kind of disaster right now. So just notice if you feel like a little edgy with this. Mars is going to keep moving. And all right, so Uranus moving into Gemini is at a particularly interesting part of the sky. So 25 degrees Taurus, 25 degrees Taurus is the star Algol, and Algol is the winking eye of Medusa. This is the ultimate feminist star. Of all the feminist stars, Algol is that star. And she's like, it's that, well, the myth of Medusa. She's the hair of snakes, and she turned them into stone, and everyone was scared of her. Well, it's that kind of anger of being repressed. And I think there's actually been a lot of work people have been doing around the Lilith myths and the goddess, the dark goddess myths. So Uranus is waking that up. And it's also moving into the Pleiades, which is a really magical group of stars that very much aligns with the New Age. So the Aquarian age that we're moving into is very much supported by the Pleiades. So Uranus is going to be in the Pleiades over the next 2 years. And as it's doing that, it's also like helping us collaborate. It's also like the Pleiades like love this planet. They love us being here. If any of you have come from there, you're like, yeah, I love nature. Can we all get along? You like got lots of friends, you've got community. That's like the Pleiadian way. And they're definitely here to help us. And I'm not the only one who thinks that. There's lots of channel material out there about it. Go read Barbara Marcini's book, Bringers of the Dawn. And yeah, I'm just co-opting a lot of things other people have said when we talk about that. So So Uranus is waking that up, and Uranus is the awakener. It rules the Aquarian age, it rules Aquarius. So it's helping us create change. Sometimes this can be uncomfortable. In our nervous systems, in our bodies, emotionally, we can feel a little bit extra anxious. All right, let's do something. All right, so let's get into September. So there's a new moon on September 2nd, 3rd, and that begins the eclipse time. So the eclipse time starts 2 weeks before an eclipse and ends 2 weeks after. So it's always a 6-week time period because there's one eclipse and then there's 2 weeks later there's another eclipse. Sometimes there's 3 eclipses. This time there's 2. And we can see that this eclipse, this moon, is at 25, 26 degrees Pisces, which is right connected to Neptune. This is almost like taking us into an altered state. This is a journey, like we're moving into a journey. And 25, 26 degrees Pisces, between 24 and 25 degrees Pisces, we're going to see this point in the sky kind of lit up multiple times. And so I think it's interesting that these eclipses kind of unsettle things. So when we're looking at world events, you may see a destabilization. Not like it's not already incredibly unstable. But it doesn't mean it's getting worse. What I tell people about eclipses is just wait. Like if you're unclear about what to do, just wait, because sometimes people get kind of a little more agitated, or we just tend to like stir up a lot of things in our head that don't actually come to fruition. So it's a time when we might get scared of something, but it's probably not going to happen. So whatever the news is at this time period, it's likely to be either fake or something is taken out of context or something is shifted around. Now, at the same time, the other thing that can happen during eclipses is something super random and faded can happen. So the best way to go through eclipses for both reasons is to stay in fluid motion and try not to overplan things. Try not to put too much into your schedules during this time. Have some room to like have your plans change, or have something like light you up that you need to clear or process, or let it stay in motion, but in a adjusting. Like the more you're comfortable with adjusting, the easier they are. So that's that one. The next one is October 2nd. Now, this one's at 10 degrees Libra, which is opposite 10 degrees Aries. This one's a little bit more of a, I think it's an impulse one, but it's more total, it's more exact. You can see how it's a lot closer to the nodes. Here's the south node here. The closer to the nodes, the more exact it is. So this is an eclipse. Now we've got the Pisces Aries energy. So we can even see that the eclipses are marking the shift from Pisces to Aries, which is the same journey that Neptune and Saturn are making. And it's marking it. It's kind of like eclipses can energize that point. If you have like an eclipse on your birthday, or the eclipse lines up with your moon, it means that things are going to change for you over the next 6 months. So there's like an energizing of that point. Okay, so November 1st, now we're moving out of the eclipse energy. And this is a new moon at what I call the justice point. So there's a real kind of calling for justice. Now, I'm gonna reveal a plan in a bit, but this time period, as we all know, is close to the election. And one of the things that's exact happening here is Mars is opposite Pluto. Now we can see Pluto's backed up into Capricorn. And Mars is over here at 29 degrees Cancer. This is a very significant opposition. And part of the reason it's really significant is that Mars is about to go retrograde. And whenever a planet's about to go retrograde, it'll go retrograde December 5th. But it slows down. And a planet slowing down, the slower it is, the more impactful it is. That's why Pluto transits are most intense, because they're the slowest. It's like they keep working on that one point. So Mars, when it goes retrograde, becomes more potent. And Mars is the planet of courage, of activism, and war. And it's going to be retrograding in the sign of Leo, which is the fire sign of leadership. But there's a lot of fire and heat happening with this Mars retrograde. It'll be retrograde all the way till the end of February. So this Mars retrograde is inside the portal. And this is why tuning in the eclipse is going to be helpful. And then during this time period, November until December, it's going to be good to not try it and do too much, but feel like you're really intentionally getting ready for the winter. This is like shoring things up. Okay, let me move on. Get to this later. All right, so these slides, by the way, are all on my website. So if you go to the talks page, you can go back and do this. So I've lined up Mars will square Neptune in September. So the new moons, the full moons on this side, and looks like a repeat. And then I keep going. And so I've got the Mars retrograde lined up here. So Pluto's moving into Aquarius and Mars is opposing it just as it's doing it. It's almost like Mars is welcoming Pluto into Aquarius. And Mars and Pluto have a particular relationship with them astrologically. They're called an octave relationship. So Venus and Neptune have an octave relationship where Venus is personal love, we fall in love, and Neptune is divine love, we love, everyone. And then Mercury is how our minds work, how we communicate and think, and Uranus is how we think out of the box. And Mars is our personal will, and Neptune and Pluto is the big evolutionary will. So Pluto is how we evolve, and Mars is how we move forward in our lives. So they're opposing, which means they're really activating each other. And so our personal wills are getting a big push to align with what we really want, what's our true evolutionary purpose. And it's not just our desire, but what we feel really called to. So working with this Mars opposition and its Mars retrograde could be an amazing time for us to move forward with our true calling in the world. If we're lost, this is going to be a difficult transit. So working with the practices that I'm going to suggest is going to help with alignments. So Mars retrograde, January, Mars is still retrograde. Mars goes direct on February 23rd, just after this full moon. Let's see. And this is the final part. Okay, so right after Mars is done with its work, and I'm thinking that because of its potential for helping us make big changes in our life and awaken in a way, that Mars retrograde is not a particularly helpful time to go out in the world and join the marches or whatever is going to get activated, because Mars, when it's retrograde, can really trigger people who, if you just feel a little agitated, you'll feel more agitated. You add guns and angry people to it, and you're better off just staying home and working with the energy internally. there's going to be great time in the spring and summer to get out on the streets, have a big joy party for the new energy that's coming.
Right, we talked about
But
next
this
year.
winter is really not the time. So I think it's, some of you will get called, and that's, your particular karma to work out. But for most of us, just really tune in like an extra questioning. Do I need to join that movement? Do I need to get active at this time period? Because it's more likely to not be effective. Pluto's not out of bounds yet. So it's the beginning of something. It's the rumblings of something. Whatever that is, it's probably not the real movement that's coming. And it could be just the one that gets us like riled up. You know how like if you get triggered and it takes a long time and then you realize it was your dad's stuff or something like that, and just like move on, and you just wish you hadn't said the thing. That's the Mars retrograde. Like just try not to say the thing and do the work inside. When we get to the spring, it's great energy for getting out there, and that's the time. So and we have this beautiful transition energy that's going to help us move from the Mars retrograde into this awakening energy, and that is Venus. And Venus is one of those bright planets of love, and Venus will go retrograde on March 1st and will be retrograde to April 12th. And it's retrograde at 10 degrees Aries. Remember I was saying 10 degrees Aries? It's going to station at 25 degrees Pisces. So Venus is like magically going, yeah, I got you in this transition. And you've just gotten through that Mars retrograde. And now we get to have this time period that's really about opening to love. And at the same time, we have two eclipses, and they are the same degrees, 23 Pisces and 10 Aries. Now, eclipses are very rarely the same 2 times in a row because the nodes move backwards. So they shift timing. So it's always like about 2 weeks. It goes backwards, so it's 2 weeks sooner. So we have eclipses every 5.5 months. But it just so happens that these eclipses are within 2 degrees of the ones that are happening in September and October. And that's part of why I'm saying, there's something about a portal that's happening. And the activation points are between 23 and 26 degrees Pisces and around 10 degrees Aries, Libra. Bring in the Virgo as well. So, which would be 23 to 25 degrees Virgo. So if you got stuff there, this is going to help you get out of stuck place in your life. It's going to help things happen. Yeah, I mean, since I have got lots there, I'm like, it's going to be amazing. So Venus is retrograde during the eclipses it's stationing at the same degrees. And then right after that, I think this is on the next slide, Saturn moves into Aries, May 24th, and actually, Neptune moves into Aries March 30th, right on the solar eclipse. So, Uranus moves into Gemini in July. They will all move back into Earth water in the fall, and then in the spring of sorry, is this right? Yeah, and then in the spring of 2025, they'll be back into air fire. Yeah. So the plane. Okay. So during the eclipses, I think it's like watch for the signs. You may even want at the beginning of it to ask for a sign, because eclipses can bring in a lot of information to us. And take extra time, to adjust to the energies of it. This is a time of reversals, upsets, ungrounded decision-making, increasing intensity in the world. I think there's just a lot of instability. It could include instability in the stock market. It doesn't mean that it's unstable in the economy. But I would get your stuff into safe stuff before the eclipses if you want to just like adjust your stock portfolios. Move it into the bonds, silver, gold. Get it out of high volatility stocks for this window of time. It's not my expertise. But it's a suggestion. Okay, next time period, October 18th to December 5th. It's like getting ready. You can take care of business now. It'll be distracting. There'll be the election. There'll be other things going on. But I'm not suggesting like diving into anything during this time period because I think there'll be enough to adjust to in terms of what's happening. We'll take a look at the election in a minute here. But Mars is in its pre-shadow time, so it's going to be, there's going to be foreshadowing of what's coming. I think the Mars retrograde is backlash after the election. Again, like I said, I think it's going to be difficult to really affect real change still. So the best thing is for us to be able to do our personal work, get our bodies, our minds, our spirits as healthy as we can, so that when it's time and when we can be really effective, we're ready to step out and move out. So if you need to kind of let go of some plans that you had for this winter and just tone it down, you can travel, but I wouldn't like jump around to travel. My son is in China right now, so I'm really glad he's there right now for 2 weeks. You know, it's okay to like go somewhere, but and if you're comfortable with traveling, then fine, travel. But if you're nervous about traveling and you're not comfortable and you're thinking about doing a bunch of things and all of a sudden some things aren't feeling right, and then get the insurance, get the refundable ticket, and keep tuning into yourself, because this is a difficult energy, this Mars retrograde. All right, so then what I'm suggesting for the portal is 3 different 40-day practices. And the first one begins around December 5th. You can start a little bit earlier, or a little bit later. You can adjust it to what feels in alignment for you. But this is the time to really kind of almost match the intensity of Pluto opposite Mars opposite Pluto. Like let yourself like feel the intensity by bringing it on. It's like chant to Shiva, to Kali, you know, just kind of scream therapy, dance, move, do things that kind of say, bring it on, whatever that is for you. Om Namah Shivaya, I'm into this kind of Sanskrit chants, whatever chants or whatever, you know, aligns for you. It can be a good time to clear, to clean, to go through stuff, like almost with the gusto. Like, I am just going to get all this crap out of my closet or out of my space. It's a good time to let go of things that you've been really attached to and you just know you got to let go. Like, yeah, that massive book collection that I have. Like, it's kind of time to like kind of let it go. Use the energy. It'll be there for you too. So, you know, it's going to help. If you work with Kundalini Yoga, I meant to talk to Jessica Ryan and ask what she would suggest, but anything that's like shaking, moving, and when we talk about 40-day practices, like pretty much every major religion, the Buddhists have 40-day practices, the Christians have 40-day practices. So anything that aligns with this. This can also be a time to work with grief. If you've had some significant losses this year, you could really tune in and kind of take some time to feel your grief. If, you know, things can get busy and sometimes we put aside our grief work to deal with other things. If you can, like, take this time to just like you know what, I've lost people and I just need to honor them at the altar. You have the wailing wall, you do whatever is going to help you do that. The second 40-day practice is stillness. This may be the most important one of the ones. So if you're going to blow up the other ones, because this window of time is when Mars is still going retrograde, there's really like a possibility for kind of deeper stillness in this time period. And if you can just do a simple practice every day that just has you remembering to just breathe, and you don't have to make any big decisions. Mars retrogrades it's not easy to make decisions during it. So I think the presence of kind of stillness practices, maybe just yoga nidra, maybe just lay on your back and breathe. Simple stillness practices, sit, meditate, get yourself on your mat during this time period. And just remember, we're doing these practices so that we take advantage of the energy in this 6-month portal time, so that when we get to next year and the change is really happening, we'll feel more aligned in our bodies and in our lives. And the third one happens during the Venus retrograde. So the first two are Mars retrograde. Mars goes retrograde for 80 days. Venus goes retrograde for 40 days. The Venus retrograde is why there are 40-day practices to begin with. So this is the time to really open up to your creative passion. So this is the fun one. This is like play, joy, anything that gets you to be creative. These are practices that can be done with other people in relationship. Venus retrogrades are known for bringing in old lovers. So notice if old lovers come in, if you want relationship, this is a good time to get yourself ready. And if you want relationship, working with these transits, like keep yourself out of relationship for this time period until now, until this spring. I'm not looking at your charts, but it could be, this is like a really great Venus retrograde. And like I said, it's lining with the eclipses that are happening at the same time. Yeah, I didn't say fun, but this can be fun. Okay, so my next section is on the election. So before I go there, questions, thoughts? Can you breathe? Yeah.
The charts that you created earlier that you showed us, you used Washington, D.C. Was there a reason for that?
There was, sorry, this is bothering me.
Yeah.
So usually I do Olympia because I'm just like so deeply geocentric and rooted here. But I was using Washington, D.C. because one, I was looking at the transits of the candidates, and I was thinking of this time period in the transition in the US as a transition time. So I was like, yeah, I got to bring in DC. I should probably always use DC for the US, but yeah, I can criticize this. Yeah, any other questions? Do you want to talk about the election?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and just so I get my bearings, like, what else do you want to talk about? Is there anything else you want me to talk about? I've covered the thing that I came here to talk about, and I'm prepared for lots of other stuff.
I mean, specifically, I could get into about
What?
About Atlanta.
Oh, Atlanta.
And I don't know.
Okay.
you restate the question?
Oh, Kathy was asking about Atlanta, Georgia. And she was tuning into something going on there and considering its significance for the election. Yeah,
I guess it's open for, I don't know if it's. But I'm interested in, fault lines.
the fault lines. Yeah, I brought up the the earthquake.
Or, like in general, how it works with astrology, I've never thought about that,
Okay,
but like how it goes underneath the earth.
yeah,
I've never thought about it.
I could say a few more things about the fault line. Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
Just about homes,
homes.
just being, there's so much going on with rental changes and how things are gonna be moving in that.
Okay. I know, I really wish I was good at that, like, because then I would like be rich. So Marta was asking about homes and rental prices and, market fluctuations.
What about stabilizing?
Stabilizing.
Time to be stable in a home or flexible.
Oh, it's a time to move to, okay. Okay. That's maybe an easier question. Yeah. World War III. Okay. Good, I was like, wait for the
How about changing the climate?
climate. Okay. Yeah. Middle East. Okay, I came prepared for that. Yeah. I can't hear you.
The political climate about
The political climate about the climate. Okay. All right. Where? Oh, yeah. I heard you say candidates, and then I.
election, are you done any work on, other candidates that you'll sign?
Okay. All right. So other candidates in addition to Kamala and Donald. Okay. Okay. I haven't. I just watched that guy, what's his name, Lightman, with his 13 keys about the election. I was like, what are other people predicting? And one of his things is that even the vice presidents don't matter. So I brought their charts though. Most, if I had an exact birth time for any of those other candidates, I'd be into them just for fun. But I don't. So, but I do have and I don't have an exact time period for the vice president, either of the vice presidential candidates either. So I think I'm going to focus on the two major ones, but thanks for asking.
Is it normal that your audience is predominantly female?
And white, yes. Yes, this is here, and I think it's part of Olympia being that, and I might be a little bit of a hard-edged feminist, so the guy's got to be like, gotta have
Is it relevant to what we were talking about tonight, though? Of meaning feminine energy?
hard for me not to take it personally, but well, I haven't thought about it that way because I think I'm just going to say no, because these are transits that are going to be great and supportive for anybody who's on an awakening journey, and that is tons and tons of men, tons and tons of people who are breaking down, and just everyone from all cultures, this isn't just for women. I mean, the Uranus transit to Algol is probably a little bit easier for people who are more on that, looking at a feminist perspective, because I think it can be triggering, just like we're seeing people being triggered by Kamala. I think that that's part of that Uranus transit, so that might be easier for women. But I think there's just a lot of women who it's going to be hard for too. So, I will tell you what I do equate it to, and this is just kind of, I came to Olympia in the 95, and I feel like there was just this really cool thing that was happening here among feminists and lesbians, and I felt drawn here for that. And I think that I'm kind of like a lingering taste from that time period. And some of you are also. You can almost smell, the wee moon calendar off Canadian. So, and thank you to my brother. And the other one. Okay, so let's talk about the election then. Let's go right into that. And sorry, I don't look. I'll tell you when to look. Okay, now you know. So the notables about election day that we're going to so now we're going to think into one day is Mars stops Pluto. It's exact. It's in Capricorn and Cancer, which means it's leaning into the old way. It's leaning into all the issues that we've had since 2008. It's not really about the new, at least not this particular transit. Mars isn't retrograde yet, but it's slowing down. Uranus is conjunct Algol, so it's exact on this day. So we're getting the Medusa feminist energy in here. There's a new moon at 9 degrees Scorpio. This is going to be like this cry for justice. It harkens back to civil rights movements. It's a nice, I think this is a positive new moon energy for the election. Jupiter is stationing at 22 degrees Gemini. And Pluto's at the last degree of Capricorn. These are the transits that I'm most focused on. There's plenty of other things going on, but these are the ones that are most interesting to me on that day. So there's something old and something new. The Mars-Pluto opposition is, there's some question on it. Maybe it'll come to me that I was thinking, oh, I know, Talitha, when you're saying that, I was thinking the Mars-Pluto opposition probably means it's not going to be the third party candidate. It's not that election. It's still going to be binary. It's still that hierarchical, we're going to get a corporate president, we're going to get like some of the old energy. But Uranus does support Kamala. It supports a woman. It says this is time. This could be the time. The moon in Scorpio could support a Black person, Asian person. Like that energy is more the civil rights, social justice energy. And we're going to look at Jupiter stationing because it's super triggering both Kamala's and Donald's. All right, you got that? So now when we look at their charts, let me see this, okay. Is it clear enough? Because I can switch out of this. Actually, yeah, okay, sorry. Okay. All right, so we can see her ascendant, 24 degrees Gemini. So Jupiter is stationing on her ascendant. This is very good. This supports her being visible, being out. The other thing about the election is there's no Mercury retrograde happening. It's not during eclipse time. So those are the things where the election is crazy. You know, that was happening during the Bush War time. It's a time when there's likely to be results. So Jupiter stationing is conjunct her ascendant, which is really positive. She has Jupiter at Eldol right here. So Uranus is on her Jupiter. That's a positive transit for change. Saturn is up here in her 10th house, which is also a very good placement. This is the time of harvesting. This is the time when your life is coming to fruition, where all the things you've done for the last 20 years have come to this moment. And it's a 2-year window. It started about a year ago. So she's in a particularly fruitful time for her work. All of these transits are supportive of winning, success, accomplishment. And the Pluto, Mars, she's got Mars at 21 degrees Leo, which means Mars is going to go back and forth over her Leo, which is going to give her the courage and the strength to deal with what's coming at her, and it will come at her. Because that Mars retrograde is going to be a backlash. She has Saturn at 28 degrees up here at the top of her chart, which is respect. Man, we've got an accurate birth time for her, 9:20 something p.m. And I also want to bring up, and this may be the most significant thing, even though it's something I know nothing about, but Chinese astrology has her being a wood dragon, 1964. This is the year of the wood dragon. And Tim Walz is also a wood dragon. So, and so am I. So 1964 is this year. So we are all, you're a wood dragon. Is it any other wood dragons? you're either 60 or 120. Or just being born. So I think that energy, which I think if you remember the beginning, like there was just a lot of conversation about it more than there usually is, because it's such an auspicious sign. It feels like there's something about Kamala and Tim coming in that's just kind of feels, it's that like something else is possible here. So they make like almost like a protection for them. So let's see. Okay, and just so for the Vedic people, she's in Rahu Venus. Rahu's in her first house of purpose. So she's in, which is an 18-year time period she's in the middle of. This is good for her drive. She's got it in her to see this through. And Venus, which she entered into in February of this year, also like she was in a Venus Ketu, which was a difficult time period in 2023. She is now in a time period where she has a passion. This is why she can talk about relationships, be out there, charming. Venus is that I want to connect and relate to you. It also aspects some good things in her chart. The 9th house of politics is doing well. So this is all very positive. So
Isn't she kind of on the cusp though? Is she actually a Libra? I
well,
mean,
I put the degrees in 28 degrees Libra.
that's interesting though. I just
Yeah.
didn't realize that she is. Does that even make a difference though, that she's like on the cusp?
Well, I mean, it's important for looking at her, but it's not necessarily important for looking at whether she wins the election.
Right.
I mean, she's born at full moon, exact full moon. Here's the sun at 25 Libra, 27 Aries. So is Donald. Both of them, we have 2 total exact full moon candidates. And the Pluto Mars energy isn't necessarily helping, but it's not hindering. It's not hitting anything major in her chart. So they're going to be in her second, eighth house, which is power. They're coming into power. I think that's a good thing that Mars Pluto aspect is not hitting her chart exactly. So
Thank you.
yeah. Okay, but I have to tell you, it's good for Donald too. So I know I just made it sound like she's gonna win, right? So before her, I was saying Biden's chart didn't look good, and it hasn't looked good for the last 2 years. I think he's been in a serious time of decline because he's in a Saturn time period, which is a time of aging, of slowing down. It's a difficult planet for him. He was in Jupiter for the 16 years prior to 2022. His Jupiter is fantastic. Biden's got this great Jupiter in his Vedic chart. So 16 years of really great politics, really great expansion, effectiveness. Just the last like year and a half to 2 years has been Saturn difficult. So in light of Biden, Trump's chart is much better than Biden's, but it's not that much better, or I'm not even sure it's better than Kamala's, but it is good because that Jupiter is stationing up here on his sun in the 10th house. So remember, 10th house is success. So Jupiter is opening that. Now, it's also opening his North Node. So in addition to him being born at an exact full moon, you can see 22 degrees Gemini, 21 degrees Sag. I mean, they're both like within a degree of full moon. Full moons, by the way, the full light is shed. You can see they both have, so they both have like full light on their moons, which means they know themselves in a certain way. You may argue with me about that, but usually full moons is you kind of, you know yourself, you can project yourself, you can be seen. It's usually considered a positive thing, but except for Donald, he was born during an eclipse. So, and an exact total eclipse, total lunar eclipse. So this is a very intense time to be born. When you were born in an eclipse, some of you may be born in eclipses. When you're born in an eclipse, you don't have the same ability to control your life. Things happen to you that feel, crazy. Like you go from billionaire to being billions in debt. You just have this like sense that things happen to you, and it's like random crazy stuff happens. So we can explain Donald's whole life just by looking at that eclipse. We can look at its reversal of fortune, it's up, it's down. So Jupiter is a positive planet shedding its light, but Jupiter, it promises a lot, but it doesn't deliver. So Jupiter, like for Kamala, it's on her ascendant. If that was the best transit happening, then I would say the same thing. But she's got Saturn up in the 10th. So Saturn delivers. Jupiter promises. So you'll notice if you've got like Jupiter moving through your 10th house, you might get a job offer, but then it's taken away, or you do it for a year and you're like, yeah, this isn't quite right. Jupiter's the hare, Saturn's the tortoise. So the hare jumps around. It's like, I got this in the bag. And Saturn's like the tortoise. Just wait and see. So Donald's hare, with Jupiter up there. But it does like support that feeling of winning, or that experience of winning. The Mars Pluto aspect is close to his Venus Saturn. So it is hitting his chart. That Mars Pluto opposition. It's not exact, but it's close enough to this to be impacting his life in a difficult way. And let me just go to the next slide because I have my notes here. So this is a powerful, so the Jupiter is a powerful transit for catapulting back in the way, or at least a major career opening. And what I think is that there's actually going to be some good stuff happening for him. Like he's probably going to get out of all of these court cases. And he's not even going to care about whether he wins personally, because there's like, nothing's like really taking him down, but nothing's, I think we need serious transits to get into the White House. And he had those before. And he doesn't really have them now. He's got Saturn in the 7th house. So in the cycle, and I'll just go back to his chart. So Saturn's here. I call this the time of blossoming. Saturn, as it goes through the first houses, is more inner work. And it's also a time when we can do what we want to do. We decide, this is what I want to do. We send lots of messages out to the universe. This is the idea I have. This is my follow through. This is my expansion on it. This, all this focus on it. When it gets to the 7th house, then the world says, but wait, you have to align with what we need. And it's a time when it's like when the flowers are blooming, the world says, oh, we like those flowers, but the world may want flowers other than the ones that you like. And it's like we're bringing ourselves out into the world, but it's not a time where we get to do it the way we want to do it. So there's a negotiation here. And I think this portends a negotiation that's happening in the back rooms about whether he stays in the election or not. And because the eclipses are happening, and because he changes bookies in the middle of all this. So like Kamala is strong. She's in Rahu Venus this whole time period. But Donald, on September 29th, is going to move from Jupiter K2 to Jupiter Venus. And Jupiter K2 is a difficult time. It's losing your mind. It's a time where you're delusional. It's kind of a crazy time. Disappointments, losses. If he was in that time period election, I would say he'd definitely lose. Because he's been losing this whole time, right? He's on a string of losses. But Jupiter Venus can be a game changer. I think, but neither Jupiter or Venus have the gravitas of the White House. This is more he gets to play. This is more why I think he might bow out of the election at that point in time, because he's got a window out where he no longer is worried about whatever he's worried about. And this is like a fun time period for him. So Jupiter Venus, and let me go back to his chart. You can see that he has Venus is here, and Jupiter is here. They're squaring each other. They have a relationship to each other, which also enhances both of them. When that happens, it's like the charm comes on, the charisma, but it's also like there's nothing in here that he wants to work hard. And I think Jupiter Venus allows him a way to just go and live in Mar-a-Lago or wherever he wants to live and play and have fun and make lots of money. I think he'll be rich. I think he'll get to win all that stuff back. I think he's got a success time period coming for him. It just doesn't seem like it's winning the White House. And it may be that things happen in those eclipses that make it so it doesn't really matter. So that's my prediction. Vance has a very strong chart. He has a strong chart for leadership, but I don't think it's him taking over. And I don't have his exact birth time, so I can't kind of go deep. So I don't know who it would be who takes over. I have just no idea. And I think it's actually a long shot. I think it's more likely he stays and then loses. But he's happy about that. Okay, so that's my election. The ultimate outcome, she wins, he can't process it and becomes more delusional, but also gets away with his crimes. There are violent backlashes, but they're not coordinated. They peter out by mid-March. It's a rocky start. So you know how they try and like do all this in the first 100 days? Like, I just hope we can chill out about that and give her, at least, the first 50 days, just like get adjusted, because, and deal with whatever, backlashes are gonna be and wherever they're gonna come from. Yeah, I mean, Vance's sun is 10 degrees Leo, which is a powerful place. Mars is going to be retrograding back and forth over it, so he may be the one that's like calling for the backlash. Mars is like not known for getting things done. It just wants, it doesn't even, like Mars in mythology didn't even really kill anybody or kill many people in mythology. He was just like, he's the one that said, you go kill someone, you go do this, you charge, Venus, go kill this person. And she's like, okay, I'll go kill. It's like, like he could get anybody else to do it. So I think that Mars retrograde triggering his sun could be him. Yeah. Okay. Is that okay? We're good? All right. Fault lines, climate change, World War III. So let me just address the World War. There's a difference between the kind of World War III that's getting some airplay, which I don't think is what happens. I don't think it's nuclear war. I don't think anybody's got the oomph to take anybody over. I mean, Russia can't even beat Ukraine. The entire Middle East can't take over Israel. Like nobody's winning and nobody's expanding in a way that actually benefits. When we had World War II, it's like the United States and the Allied powers got to take over the whole world and like dominate everything. That's not what happens. It's the reverse. So it's revolution, but it's more likely things where they're local pockets. And I think there's a way, because there's so much awakening that can happen, that it could even be a local pocket in the same time space, but not in the same energetic space. So we might see some crazy people in Olympia. We might see some uprising here. And if it's for most of us, we can just like walk through it. I think there's going to be ways to deal with this, and especially if we're doing these practices and aligning with these transit over this time period. So so in terms of climate change, now climate change is a much bigger thing, but I will say that in the 1860s, when we look at the beginning of this cycle, that was when climate change was first recognized by Eunice Foote and John Tyndall, and they first said, ooh, with all this coal burning, we're really screwing up our environment. Those were the first people to talk about it in the 1860s. So as we go throughout this time period, 1980s, when it was, I forgot the guy, John Hanson or somebody, who was like talking to the UN or Congress about it. So I think because when Pluto gets into Aquarius, there's a chance for a different kind of technology, and more likely there'll be kind of a breakdown in some of the things that are doing so much of the polluting. And so you may want to, I think it's more about like practicing getting off our stuff, like during this time period, if you can just take a little bit more of a break from the technology and the streaming and that stuff. Because now that's the biggest pollution, right? The biggest energy suck is happening among, all these data farms, right? So that's likely to increase and then come to a head. And at the same time, I think there's just incredible inventions that are happening where we're able to kind of change the carbon in the atmosphere into things that are useful. There's those like towers in Rotterdam and Shanghai where they just have a tower in the center and an entire block. It cleans the air for the entire block. I'm not making that up. There's like things that are happening that we can't hear about, but we'll start hearing about it next year. So I think it's going to be probably difficult, but I don't think it's going to be a long time. And this is where maybe I'm different than all the other projections, where everyone's like, this is going to take 50 years to clean up. I think it's going to get a little worse when we get to 2028, 29, and we start having things that are cleaning up things instantaneously. I think there's like room for a big scientific paradigm shift. If we think about science, it's like it's some part imagination, some part data collection. Do you know the equations? They don't always work. So Maxwell had an imagination based on Faraday. It was just all imagination. So as we have a different imagination, as our minds kind of change, we can see things in a different way. And I think there could be really radical shifts for climate, for how we work together, for what happens in the Middle East. It doesn't start until next year. So that's why it's really unfortunate that so much has been stirred up there in a time period where it's not really fortuitous for them to succeed or move into peace. But I don't think it's World War III in that kind of way. I'm pretty certain about that one. I can't say that it's going to be peaceful the whole time. I think there's going to be pockets of revolution. I think there's going to be places that collapse. I think there can be the perfect storm of environment, economics, political unrest, all happening at the same time. But it's more likely to be in pockets versus like an entire region or something like that, and certainly not all over the world. Okay, did I address that one? Okay. And I really, it's just kind of a personal thing, but I don't like to hear the talk of nuclear war because I really don't think it's going to happen, and I think it's a distraction. And I think the fear of it is the thing that's kind of making other things more toxic. So, and besides, if it's going to happen, what are we going to do? What's the point of being afraid of something like that? Unless you feel personally called to stand at a nuclear reactor site and do something about it. But, and some of us will get called to different activism things. I mean, there's really, really effective activism that can start next summer. And it may be just the beginnings of it. Those planets do dip back into Earth water in the winter of 2025, but then they're full on in 2026. Fault lines. The thing that I know is there's been, okay, is that okay? Okay. Fault lines. The best research that I've seen has been books that people have written where they delineate and separate out. Mostly the studies have been on the Andreas fault line, because it's California and it's astrology. But and those fault lines in California and that area are much more aligned to the fixed signs, Taurus, Capricorn. So I'm not. Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, those, around middle degrees of those. Those are where some of those are activated. So I haven't studied the other ones, and I haven't seen anybody who studied the Cascadia region, but there's not a lot of data points. We haven't had a lot. It's really helpful to get ones that are over 6.0, which we haven't had many of. So it's an educated guess, which is probably just as good as, what the scientists say. They don't seem to be very good at it. So, but I was feeling there was an eclipse. There was they were predicting one in Japan right now. So I haven't studied the one in Japan. So the seismologists there were actually shutting down the cities in Japan for a week, just this past week. But I haven't heard that there's been one. Maybe they're astrologers. All right, what were the other questions? Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah. Okay, so let's check it out. I put all of these slides in just so that these are all on my website, so you have them all, so you can just geek out on all this. Synodic cycle stuff, and I'm going to get to people and places. Okay, so let's just look at. Let's jump to the places first. So this is going to be the chart for Israel. It's going to be the chart for Palestine. It's kind of the beginning of the separation of that, the creation of the country there. It was close to an eclipse. You can see that the sun is at 23 degrees Taurus. So that's where Uranus has been. It's been triggering the North Node in the sun. So in some ways, this is good because Uranus is getting off of that point. But this is very much unrest. Uranus rules unrest. And people feeling nervous. And so that's one of the transits that's happening. The Mars retrograde is going to go over the Moon Pluto conjunction, Saturn conjunction here. And so Moon Pluto there's an intensity, there's a depth to it, there's leadership here. This can also be Pluto, when it's connected to the moon, can be secrets, can be related to corruption, disintegration. Mostly, it generally means power. You add Saturn to it, and that brings in authority. So this is gravitas. This is like, we're here, there's a powerfulness to it, there's karma related to it. Saturn's planet of karma. Scorpio South Node, Chiron, this is the woundedness. This is like how much wounding there is and how much healing there needs to happen around this area, and particularly in Israel and in the region, Palestine. So this is like, a sign of the trauma that so many of the refugees, both Jewish, Palestinians, feel in this relationship, because this is pointing to this. So Uranus has been triggering this for the last several years, actually getting off. So there might be something that really shifts. But the Mars retrograde is probably going to be the game changer. And once that's done, Uranus will be off the sun totally, and Mars will move on. Pluto will be opposite the moon for the next several years. It's not really an easy transit. It's usually kind of some kind of transformation, death, some kind of significant loss. At the same time, we see Neptune here at 10 degrees Libra. So these transits, these eclipses, that Venus retrograde is going to be activating Neptune, which can be inside the structure of, so I'm looking at the organization that really was barely created by Jewish people to begin with. This is an imperialist chart created by the imperial powers, without deep regard for any of the people. So this Neptune, though, is suggestive of a new movement that happens within the region that can support a new idea. So as we see the eclipses, both in September and then the ones in March, and then the Venus retrograde, there could be like something that's happening inside that is really like a new vision. And it could be like a movement that kind of arises out of the people. This is Neptune's not really a sign that has to do with other, it doesn't have to do with the plutocracy doesn't have to do with the hierarchy. It's much more like about spiritual, how people live in their spiritual lives. So I think there's a new vision that is emerging, which may be very different than two-state solution or any of the things that people have been talking about. It could be something very different. And I think it comes out of the spiritual qualities in the place itself. And so this is just interesting to me. 3 p.m. is not, usually we use noon because we never know what time, but 3 p.m. is an actual time that's used. So we can use the ascendant with this also. Let's see. Do you have anything to say about it? He just got through his Saturn return. Another transit that is kind of a big one that I'm not barely even talking about is that Jupiter and Saturn are squaring. They're lining up with his chart, but let's go on. We don't. This guy. What else? Okay, places. I only pulled up this. I pulled up other ones.
What about Netanyahu? Yeah, there we go.
So, Mercury, Neptune, South Node, like he was born in 49, so he was born the year after Israel was created. So his birth chart is really particularly connected with the outer planets all being in the same place as the country. He's also born in an eclipse, just a little bit, they probably didn't call it an eclipse, but it's close. He's got moon on the south node, Neptune. He's got a lot here. He was born in a dark moon. So dark moon is you're mysterious. You don't know yourself very well. There's like things that we can't see about the agenda. Whereas I think Kamala and Donald, their agendas are, yeah, we see it. That's like a full moon. This is like something is, dark. Like in behind the scenes, it's not visible, and that Neptune in the chart is conjunct his Mercury, which has his words being connected to what it's a vibration, like his words, and when he speaks, it vibrates with the people in Israel, but this part is invisible. So and he's got Mars in Leo, Pluto in Leo. So the Mars retrograde doesn't get all the way up to here, but it is triggering his chart. And I think for both him and for Putin, that when these changes happen next summer, I don't think they're still in power. Because I think they're part of this old energy. And so I think this Saturn is opposing Jupiter squaring. So this is triggering his Saturn, which is his hold in power. Saturn's up at the top of his chart. So this is like somebody who we perceive as being in power, we perceive as being in charge. People probably just automatically respect him. When Saturn's up at the top of the chart, people just think you know what you're doing. And Jupiter's squaring it, Saturn's opposing it. So this is his hold on power is really getting challenged. It's let me just that goes well, it's the same timing that we're talking about. They're square for the first time now, like August 20th, 21st. So Jupiter's moving into the square to Saturn. It will square 2 more times. And then that will be done around June 2025. So it's another one of the transits that's in the parentheses and in the brackets. That one's a lot about changes in the world. Although it happens every 5 years, so it's not like a big deal, but this is him losing his grip on power, I think. And then the Mars retrograde, but I do think we might not fully see that until the spring. I mean, the eclipses could hit it, and the eclipses will be right on his midheaven. Will be on his Mercury, so we see these eclipses, these eclipse points really activating his chart. So eclipses can be a big change for him. You get soon, okay? I'll keep talking, but yeah.
Okay.
Oh, hi.
Good stuff, you know, like, the young people and people who are from more food and.
Yeah, can I just like, I don't think we need to look at this. I'm not seeing anything that's jumping out right now. I'm gonna get off. Let's just hang out here. So one of the things is I think we're gonna see this big change in terms of leadership, and we're gonna, right now, Pamela's 64, but the people born in the 1980s are gonna step into power really quickly, probably starting in 2026. So not this election, but the election after. And that's where we're going to see this really new generation. So people born before 1977, those of us, we have to work on our body, mind, spirit connection because Chiron wasn't discovered and all these other planets weren't discovered. And so we have to do our own personal growth work. And if we haven't, then we get to be kind of douchebags if we want to be there. But the people born after 77 have a different consciousness. And when we talk about the late 1980s, these are people who are very much about social justice and they have a lot of passion for Scorpio. They have this sense of purpose. So I think we're going to like skip over a few generations, maybe, a smattering of people like in positions of power, but I think we're going to see 40-year-olds stepping into the limelight in a really short amount of time. And when that happens, it's like they'll catalyze all the other people who are younger and all these other indigo children, all these other cool, younger generation people who are just like, when is this, when can we kind of blow off the Pluto Capricorn energy? Pluto and Capricorn definitely benefits age. It definitely kind of benefits, the longer the wisdom, it's Capricorn's that sign of age. So moving into Aquarius will also like be the new energy. The actual technical age of Aquarius, I think, is not for another 100 years. So, but that doesn't matter because there's all this other energy that's happening. That's, I think, even more important.
Does moving into the age of Aquarius, or is it somehow related to consciousness rising?
Yeah, there's in the esoteric world of Alice Bailey and the mystics of the the 1800s, there's this understanding about rays, which are 7 forces in the universe, and the Aquarian age is aligned with the 7th ray, and that's the highest ray that they delineated, and that is the sense of magic, of ceremony, of being able to understand, like right now we just work with pyramids and not even like a full like octagon, we just like cut the pyramids off, and so energetically we're working with really simple basic stuff. When we get into the 7th ray energy, which really kicks in now, it's already starting, and it's been happening over the last 50 years. But the more we get into it, the more our structures become less hierarchical, more collaborative, more like dodecahedrons or icosahedrons, like, and then we also move into a different kind of technology. And these can have, like, if we think about Maxwell, who was Scottish in the 1860s, like his imagination was limited to a very kind of hierarchical oppression, you know, British Empire kind of focus. The new ways of thinking about technology and understanding it can be radically different. And I think we'll see, and when that's happening, it's not just about that, but it's also about our own spiritual awareness, our experience of multidimensional living, where it's not just third, fourth dimension, where we feel like we can move into other dimensions. And then we can work with the third, fourth dimension almost like an alchemist. Like, okay, we need to change this. Oh, home.
Let me rephrase my question or clarify. I'm thinking more along the lines of all this symposium and things. Do we want to root in a home and our winning back our social relationships and our close environment? Or do we want to be moving more into groups and expanding and keeping things flexible?
Okay, so Martha was asking, do we want to root into our home where we are, or do we want to expand into communities, or, you know, do we want to? I would root into home now for this winter. This is definitely like a root in time. When we get to next spring, I think the signs will become clearer about which way to go there. So I think there's an opening for people to work together, to live together, you know, these communities on land that we've been talking about for a long time. I think there's a more possibility for that to happen. So I do think there's more movement that happens within the economy also. Like right now it's pretty stuck. Like most of us are like, I have a house to live in, thank you, blessings every day. But I think there's a sense of more opportunities that happen come next year, but I do think this is a good area to be in. I think it's kind of personal in a way, because I think some people, when this revolution kicks in, they're going to be like, particularly people with, you know, Taurus on their midheaven. They're gonna feel like they want to be in the midst of it, which means get yourself into the city and get in the middle of it. And then some of us are gonna be like, you know what, I don't need, this isn't my battle. I'm gonna step out and be part of a community that doesn't even know that there's a revolution happening. So I think it's really personal. And I would use, look at what signs on your midheaven. If it's like anything between, Aries to Leo, that's like you're a little bit more here to be in the middle of it. If it's but if it's the opposite, then it's more like wheat. Okay. I feel like this is a good closing point. Yeah, I realize I touched lightly on some things that one thing is my brother here and I are working on a podcast, and Joe, could you raise your hand? Joe is my assistant, and he's helping me get these podcasts out. They're not out yet, but they will be going into a lot of history. We've got like 3 hours on a RAM to upload. So we'll be talking about it, and he knows more about the politics and history than I do, but I'll just be like, anything positively about that? But anyway, so there'll be things coming out. My book is out of my hands entirely. So it's in the final stage of design. She said she'll probably have it done at the end of the month. But that means that it'll go to the printers, and so maybe October, maybe November, hopefully before the end of the year. I'll let you know. And yeah, So, and there'll be more things like on my website, articles and things that I'll be putting out too. It'll all be kind of to support the book coming out. And so once you have the book, then it'll be easier to like align with some of the historical things that I've been talking about. All right, there's my plug. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good to see all of you. Have a lovely evening. Anybody quitting?